You're too small to be a mother. You'd break." He said it with a smile. The chandeliers above us glittered like they approved. Cameras flashed, champagne glasses clinked. His hand rested on my waist like I was a trophy he had already paid for. I remember the exact pressure of his fingers, measured, controlled, owning. I looked up at him and smiled back, not because it didn't hurt, but because I understood something in that moment. He didn't think I could survive without him. 6 months later, the world would call me the most powerful mother in the city, and he would be asking for permission to see a child he never believed I could have. Welcome back to Storyverse Vault, my beautiful, amazing Story Vault family. You all have been so supportive, and I promise to always try my best to give you the best stories as I learn and improve every day. If this is your first time coming across my video, to comment below where you are watching from and hit subscribe to officially join the Story Vault family. Now let's get into today's story. Elena Vale was known for two things: grace and silence. She moved through rooms like she belonged there, but never demanded attention. Petite, composed, always underestimated. She had married Adrian Vale at 26. The media called them a dynasty in the making. He was a ruthless CEO who turned collapsing companies into empires. She was presented as the refined beauty who softened his edges. On magazine covers, they looked untouchable. In private, their home felt like a boardroom. Adrian believed in structure, schedules, optimization. Even their dinners were timed. Even their conversations were strategic. Affection was public. Evaluation was private. He corrected how she spoke in meetings, adjusted how she held her wine glass, reminded her that perception was everything. Elena listened, observed, adapted. But she never stopped noticing the way he spoke to her when doors closed. Not cruel, just diminishing. Like she was delicate glass in a room built of steel. The idea of a child did not arrive dramatically. It came quietly. One morning over breakfast, Elena placed her cup down gently. "I want to start a family." Adrian did not look up immediately. He finished reading a financial report. Then he folded it, neatly. "You're too fragile," he said calmly. "Pregnancy would be hard on someone your size." He stood and adjusted his cufflinks. "It would also complicate expansion plans." She felt the words land like weights. This wasn't concern. It was assessment. "I'm stronger than you think," she replied. He gave a soft, dismissive smile. "Strength isn't about wanting something, Elena. It's about being built for it." That night, she stared at the ceiling long after he fell asleep. I remember touching my stomach, not because there was a child there, but because I knew something inside me had just shifted. Weeks later, the truth revealed itself accidentally. Elena had returned early from a charity committee meeting. Adrian was in his private office. The door was slightly open. She heard her name. "It's more efficient this way," he was telling his board through speakerphone. "A surrogate eliminates unpredictability." He paced slowly. "I don't trust her body to handle it." Laughter echoed faintly from the speaker. He continued, "This ensures a controlled heir." Controlled. He wasn't protecting her. He was bypassing her. No medical consultation, no shared decision, just a strategy. Elena stood outside that door, heart steady, not racing, not breaking, freezing. That was the moment she understood. This was never about her size, it was about ownership. She did not confront him. Not that night, not the next morning. Instead, she began observing differently. She reviewed their marriage agreement, every clause, every appendix. Adrian believed in airtight contracts. He believed she skimmed them when they married. He believed wrong. There was a dormant clause, one buried beneath asset distribution language, an independent investment trust allocated in her name, activated only upon written notice in specific conditions. He had structured most of the empire under his control, but he had gifted her one piece, small, isolated, untouched. He assumed she would never understand it. Elena called a lawyer the following week, quietly, discreetly. "I'd like to activate a provision," she said. Her days changed rhythm. She began studying trust law, adoption frameworks, philanthropic structures, not impulsively, strategically. If he believed she was fragile, she would let him. If he believed she needed his empire, she would let him. Elena attended charity visits alone now, orphanages, transitional shelters. She watched children who had learned silence too early. She saw herself in their stillness, not broken, just waiting. One afternoon, a little boy sat alone drawing houses without doors. She knelt beside him. "What's missing?" she asked gently. He didn't answer. He just kept drawing walls. That image stayed with her. The exit was not dramatic. There was no screaming match, no shattered glass. Elena scheduled a press release before she told Adrian. The statement was precise. Personal growth and philanthropic focus. When she informed him, he barely reacted. "You'll be back," he said calmly. "The world outside this life isn't kind." He believed she was stepping away from power. He believed she would miss proximity to his success. She packed lightly. Jewelry he bought stayed behind. Clothes chosen by stylists remained untouched. She left with documents, her trust activation papers, and something else. Resolve. As the elevator doors closed on the penthouse floor, she did not cry. I wasn't leaving his world. I was building mine. The city she chose was quieter, smaller skyline, fewer cameras. Elena Vale rented a restored brick townhouse on a tree-lined street where no one cared about stock prices. There were no marble floors, no staff, no security detail. She unpacked her documents first, then a single-frame photo of her younger self before the marriage. The trust activation had cleared. Funds were liquid, independent, legally insulated. She did not splurge. She allocated. Attorneys, compliance advisors, child welfare consultants. She spent her mornings studying case files, her afternoons visiting facilities that needed restructuring, her evenings drafting a charter. The foundation would not be symbolic. It would be operational, accountable, transparent. When the incorporation papers were filed, she signed simply, Elena Vale, founder. No reference to Adrian, no borrowed power. The foundation launched quietly. No gala, no celebrity endorsements, just a press release and a website outlining measurable objectives. Transitional housing for single mothers, legal assistance for guardianship disputes, therapeutic programs for children in foster systems. Elena attended every planning meeting. She asked hard questions. How many beds are actually filled? How long does reunification take on average? Where do they fall through? Her team realized quickly she was not playing philanthropist. She was building infrastructure. Online articles began appearing. Former billionaire wife rebrands as advocate. The tone was skeptical at first, then curious. Photographs circulated of her sitting on plastic chairs inside community centers. No diamonds, no stylists, just attentive listening. Adrian saw one of the headlines in his office. He smirked. A phase, he told his executive assistant. The first foster placement was not planned for publicity, it was urgent. A 5-year-old boy, name Leo, minimal speech, no known relatives, transferred twice in 6 months. Elena read his file twice before agreeing. When he arrived, he carried a small backpack and avoided eye contact. He did not cry. He did not ask questions. He simply scanned the room as if measuring exits. Elena showed him his room, neutral colors, a small desk, a nightlight shaped like a moon. He sat on the floor and removed a notebook from his bag. He began drawing, houses again, walls complete, doors absent. She did not interrupt. She sat beside him, not touching, not hovering, just present. I'm not here to replace anyone, she said softly. I'm here to stay. He did not respond, but he did not move away. The adjustment period was clinical at first, routine, school drop-offs, therapy appointments, scheduled check-ins. Leo resisted physical contact. He spoke in single words. He slept lightly. Elena adjusted her calendar around him. Board meetings became virtual. Site inspections shortened. One evening during a thunderstorm, the power flickered. Leo froze. His breathing shifted. He covered his ears. Elena knelt in front of him. It's just noise, she said. But she saw something else. Memory, not fear of thunder, fear of unpredictability. She turned on a battery lantern, placed it between them, sat quietly. I realized then that strength wasn't loud. It was staying in the room when someone else wanted to run. By morning, Leo had moved his drawing notebook closer to her side of the couch. A small shift, but a deliberate one. 3 months later, Elena filed for adoption. The legal process was thorough. Home inspections, financial disclosures, psychological evaluations. She complied with every requirement. No shortcuts, no leverage. When the court date arrived, Leo wore a navy sweater. He held her hand tightly but did not look at the judge. The ruling was concise. Adoption approved. Full parental rights granted. Elena exhaled slowly, not visibly, not dramatically, but fully. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. The story had grown. From billionaire's wife to adoptive mother. Microphones hovered. "How does it feel to start over?" one asked. She answered evenly. "I didn't start over. I started correctly." Leo looked up at her for the first time in public. The foundation expanded within a year. 2 transitional homes operational, a legal aid partnership established. Volunteer network tripled. Investors began reaching out, not for charity dinners, for collaboration. Elena's trust had grown strategically. Diversified portfolios, low-risk acquisitions, steady accumulation. In boardrooms across the original city, something shifted. A rival firm began quietly purchasing shares of Adrian Vale's corporation. Aggressively, incrementally. Adrian dismissed it as market noise. He trusted his majority. He trusted his control. He did not scrutinize the purchasing entity closely. He did not recognize the layered structure. The holding company traced back to an independent trust, one activated months ago. The charity gala invitation arrived in Boston silver, hosted by Elena's foundation, major donors, policymakers, press. Adrian decided to attend, not for support, for curiosity. When he entered the ballroom, it felt different from the one 6 months ago. Less spectacle, more substance. Displays showcased housing statistics, success rates, names of families transitioned to stability. At the center of the room stood Elena, in a tailored ivory gown, Leo beside her in a small suit, his hand wrapped around hers. Not clinging, choosing. Adrian approached with controlled confidence. "You built this to spite me," he said quietly. Elena met his eyes without flinching. "No," she replied. "I built this because you said I couldn't." Leo looked between them. Adrian noticed something he had never calculated. She was not smaller. The room leaned toward her. Investors waited for her nod. Officials sought her approval. Power had moved. And for the first time, he was not directing it. The morning after the gala, markets opened like any other day. Screens lit up, numbers moved. Executives dialed into conference calls. At Vale Corporation headquarters, tension entered quietly. A compliance memo circulated. A review of legacy vendor contracts had triggered regulatory interest. Language inside older agreements suggested exploitative penalty structures. Adrian scanned the summary twice. "These are standard leverage clauses," he said sharply. But analysts were not calm. A second notification followed. An institutional investor had increased its stake again. Not a small purchase, a strategic one. Board members began asking questions. Who is accumulating this aggressively? The legal team traced the acquisitions, layered entities, private holding structures, each legally sound, each aligned. Adrian leaned back in his chair. He still believed he held majority control. He still believed he could outmaneuver any threat. He did not yet understand that power can move without announcing itself. Elena watched the same market shifts from a different office. Her foundation's headquarters was modest but efficient. Glass walls, open workspaces, no intimidation, just motion. Her financial advisor presented the update. The trust now holds a controlling interest through the coalition. She nodded once. Not triumphant, measured. She had not orchestrated chaos. She had identified weakness. Years earlier, while reviewing tax structures during their marriage, she had seen irregularities, vendor pressure tactics, aggressive expansion into unstable sectors. Adrian's empire was profitable, but it was brittle. She had built patiently, waiting for the right moment to consolidate influence. This was not revenge. This was correction. I never wanted his throne. I wanted accountability. The board convened an emergency session. Adrian entered confident. He outlined defensive measures, stock buybacks, legal counteractions, public reassurance campaigns. Halfway through his presentation, The general counsel cleared her throat. There has been a formal motion, she said. He paused. A motion for leadership review. Silence spread across the room. He looked around the table. Familiar faces avoided his eyes. On whose authority? He demanded. The answer came plainly. Majority shareholder coalition. He felt it then. Not fear, disbelief. He had never calculated losing control internally. He requested disclosure of the coalition's representative. The name was submitted in writing. Elena Veltrust. For a moment, the room seemed smaller. Adrian drove to Elena's foundation without an appointment. No cameras followed. No assistants accompanied him. He entered through the front doors like any visitor. Receptionists recognized him instantly. He requested to see her. She agreed. They met in a conference room overlooking a courtyard where children were playing. Leo was outside with a volunteer, planting seedlings in raised garden beds. Adrian noticed the detail. Soil on small hands. Sunlight. Unscripted laughter. Elena remained seated when he entered. You engineered this, he said. I stabilized it, she replied. You're dismantling my life. You constructed it on imbalance. His jaw tightened. You could have told me. I did, she answered calmly. You said I would break. The words hung between them. He demanded financial transparency. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were documented findings, risk exposure reports, legal vulnerabilities, projected losses if investigations escalated. You knew? He asked quietly. For years, she said. Why didn't you expose it? She met his gaze steadily. Because destroying you would not fix the structure. Her voice did not waver. I chose to fix it. The proposal was clear. Executive restructuring, ethics oversight committee, vendor restitution plans, and his resignation as CEO with a dignified exit package. You're removing me from my own company, he said. No, she corrected. I'm protecting what thousands of employees depend on. For the first time, he saw not opposition, but resolve built without him. The leadership vote passed within 48 hours. Public announcement framed it as strategic evolution. Markets responded with cautious optimism. Investors praised the ethics pivot. Adrian's resignation statement was concise. After years of dedicated leadership, I am stepping aside to support long-term stability. No scandal, no courtroom spectacle, but privately he felt stripped. Identity intertwined with title. Title removed. He watched the press conference live. Elena did not attend. She delegated the announcement to the newly appointed interim CEO. She remained at the foundation, reviewing housing applications, prioritizing case files. Her focus never shifted toward celebration. Power had changed hands quietly. That evening, Adrian returned to the courtyard. Not as a shareholder, not as a chief executive, as a man uncertain of his next step. Leo was kneeling in the soil again. Elena stood nearby, sleeves rolled slightly, hands ungloved. He approached slowly. Children ran past him without recognition. No one parted for him. No assistants cleared space. He stopped a few feet away. I was wrong, he said. The admission felt unfamiliar. I measured everything, he continued, except what mattered. Elena studied him carefully. There was no collapse in his posture, just less armor. Leo looked up from the soil. His small hand reached toward Adrian instinctively. Adrian hesitated, then took it. The grip was firm, not fragile. The next week unfolded without spectacle. Adrian Vale did not retreat into exile. He requested a meeting with the newly appointed executive team. This time he sat at the opposite end of the table, not at the head. He reviewed compliance reforms, vendor restitution schedules, employee protection policies. He asked precise questions, not to dominate, to understand. Outside the corporation, analysts began reframing the narrative. Strategic transition strengthens corporate governance. His name no longer carried unilateral control. It carried association. He felt the difference. Control commands. Association participates. That evening, he walked alone past the headquarters lobby, where his portrait once hung. It had been replaced by a mission statement. He studied it for a moment. Then he left without asking for it back. Elena expanded the foundation's reach into policy advocacy. She met with city officials about foster system reform. She insisted on data transparency, long-term housing pathways, educational continuity for displaced children. Her proposals were pragmatic, cost-efficient, sustainable. She did not leverage her shareholder influence publicly. She separated governance from charity. At home, routines remained structured around Leo. Homework at the kitchen table, reading before bed, weekend gardening. One afternoon, Leo brought her a new drawing. This time, the house had a door. It was slightly open. She crouched to his level. "Who lives here?" she asked. He answered in a clear voice. "Us." The word landed with weight. Adrian began volunteering at the foundation discreetly, not in executive spaces, in logistics, supply inventory, facility maintenance. He wore simple clothes. No press, no announcements. Some staff recognized him. They observed cautiously. He did not assert authority. He followed instructions. One afternoon, a delivery truck arrived late. Volunteers scrambled to unload donations before rain began. Adrian stepped into the line, carried boxes, stacked supplies, mud stained his shoes. Leo watched from under the awning. After the last box was stored, Leo approached him. "You missed a spot," the boy said, pointing to dirt on Adrian's sleeve. Adrian looked down and laughed softly. He wiped it off. Small corrections, offered without fear. Several months passed. The corporation stabilized under new leadership. Ethics oversight reports showed measurable improvement. Employee retention increased. Vendor lawsuits decreased. Adrian accepted a consulting role without executive authority. He attended fewer high-profile events. He began studying sectors he had previously ignored: community investment, workforce development. He met Elena one evening on the townhouse steps. There were no negotiations left, no contracts between them, just conversation. "I thought legacy meant expansion," he said. She listened. "And now?" she asked. "Now I think it means repair." She did not smile immediately, but she did not look away. The medical file had remained in Elena's possession for years. She had found it during an insurance review early in their marriage. Confidential lab results, clinical confirmation, infertility diagnosis. Not hers, his. Doctors had recommended counseling, alternative family planning discussions. He had concealed it, redirected the narrative, spoken of timing, stress, her supposed fragility. She never confronted him with the document, not to protect his pride, but to understand his fear. One evening, she placed the file on the kitchen table. He recognized it instantly. "You knew," he said quietly. "For a long time," she answered. He sat down slowly. "I didn't want to be seen as lacking." "You weren't," she said evenly. "You were afraid." The distinction mattered. He expected accusation, exposure, public unraveling. Instead, she spoke calmly. "The surrogate plan was donor-based," she said. "You would have had a child regardless." He closed his eyes briefly. "I thought controlling the process would protect me." "It isolated you," she replied. Silence settled between them, not hostile, not comfortable, honest. Leo's laughter echoed faintly from the living room, a reminder of what had already been built without biology. Adrian exhaled. "I don't deserve this," he admitted. "Deserve isn't the metric," she said. "Commitment is." The statement was simple, not sentimental. Weeks later, they attended a small ceremony at one of the transitional homes. A new wing had been completed. Additional apartments for single mothers and children. No red carpet, just community members, staff, families. Elena stood before the gathering and spoke briefly. "Strength isn't physical," she said. "It's consistent." She did not mention Adrian. She did not reference the past. When the ribbon was cut, Leo held the scissors with both hands. Adrian stood beside him, not central, present. The crowd dispersed gradually. Sunset painted the courtyard in muted gold. Elena felt a subtle shift within her body, a knowledge confirmed weeks earlier in a quiet clinic appointment. This time, the pregnancy was intentional, mutual, chosen. She placed a hand lightly over her abdomen. Adrian noticed. A question formed in his eyes. She answered with a small nod. No announcement, no spectacle, just certainty. They walked toward the garden together, three silhouettes lengthening against the fading light. Family was not defined by size, it was defined by decision. And this time, the choice was hers. Subscribe to Storyverse Vault right now. Like this video to support powerful storytelling. Comment below what moment hit you the hardest. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that strength is not measured by size. Stay connected. More unforgettable stories are coming.